So first things first, I'm going to introduce you to each analyzer. This is your IDEXX Vet Lab station. This is the brains of the operation. This is where you're going to start all of your runs from. You will enter all of your patient information on here and then choose the analyzers that you wish to run, and then they will transfer back into AVIMark once they've been entered into here appropriately. Moving down the line, this is your IDEXX laser site. This is your CBC analyzer. This will give you your complete blood count, 5-part differential, reticulocyte count, and it will do all of that in 10 minutes. This big analyzer here, this is your catalyst. This is what runs your chemistries, electrolytes, thyroid, fructosamine, phenobarbital, urine protein creatinine ratios, soon to be SDMA on a slide, and many other things to come in the future. It's an ever expanding platform on this one. This is running serum or plasma, and we also have the option on this analyzer to run whole blood if you use one of our lithium heparin whole blood separators, so something that the other analyzers don't offer. This analyzer here, this is the snapshot. This is where you're going to run your bile acids and cortisol, but then you can also use this to run any of your snap tests, such as heartworm, feline triple, and any of those other tests that you would want to run in this snapshot. Down here we have our COAG, IDEXX COAG. This is what will run your clotting tests, so your PT and your PTT. It runs on sodium citrate cartridges, and it would run off of a blue top tube. Okay, so back here. So to start your runs, you guys are going to start from the touchscreen. It likes kind of a light tappy touch, so use your fingernail, the back of a pen, the non-writing end of a pen. And you're going to start from add new patient. Any information that is required has a red asterisk next to it, so you are going to enter that information there. In order for your information to transfer back into AVIMark and into the patient record, your patient name has to be the ID number from AVIMark. So instead of putting Fluffy Jones, you're going to put 12675 or whatever their ID number is, and then the client ID as well, and it will transfer back in. So if we just enter a test one here, you notice that more information pops up. That appears to be Anne's information. So if it's a patient that you've ran before, it will pop up with their information and you can choose them. Otherwise, if that's not the patient, you can add new client. You're going to tell it your species and a life stage. So for life stage, you can either choose puppy or kitten, adult, geriatric, or if you put in an age, it will actually auto-populate to the specific life stage. So if you put 10 years old, it's going to say that it's geriatric. If you put 6 months old, it's going to call it a puppy or a kitten. Okay, so once everything with an asterisk is filled out, you're going to tap on next. I want you to confirm your life stage, and then you can enter your doctor information, and if you wish to, you can also enter your weight. Down here at the bottom, we have all sorts of green icons. So you'll notice we have our laser sight icon, our catalyst, snapshot. We have a new icon that came out with just our newest release, which is the UA icon, which would allow you to enter your UA strip results into the analyzer and have them flow back into AVIMark as well. Also, your specific gravity would be captured here. Your COAG, and then you have all of your snap tests. So you have your snapshot, and you can use that to run any of your snap tests, but you also have each snap test listed out individually for this species. Since we choose a canine, it's all of the canine snap tests. So say your snapshot was full, it's heartworm season, you're in a busy practice and you're running back-to-back-to-back heartworm tests. Your snapshot could be full, but you have that third or fourth heartworm that you really need to run while the owner's waiting. You could choose the 40X Plus, and it will put the icon up here and allow you to use the Vet Lab station as a timer, and then also allow you to enter your results on here as well. So keep that in mind when you're in a busy practice and things get kind of busy. You do have the option to still manually run it on the counter and enter your results on here, so everything's still captured. So we will choose the analyzers that we want to run, and then that will send the information to those analyzers, and then we'll work from there. We'll start with the laser site. If I choose my laser site, it puts up sample type whole blood. 99% of the time, you're just going to be running a CBC, so it's default to whole blood. But this analyzer also has the capability to run other bodily fluids, such as abdominal fluid, thoracic fluid, synovial fluid. So it's not going to give you a complete blood count on those, but it will give you a cell count. So say I was running abdominal fluid on a patient that we tapped, I would choose abdominal, and then I would put it in a purple top just like normal, and it would run that. Okay, if you choose something and you didn't want it, or if you chose it twice, just tap on it again and it'll go back down, and then you can choose what you needed to choose. With the laser site, it runs on specific purple top tubes. We have what we call Vet Collect tubes. These are the purple top tubes that you have to use for this laser site. It will not run any other purple top tubes. These tubes hold 0.5 to 1.5 mLs of blood. You want to make sure that when you fill it, you're filling through the top, so pierce the top of the tube and let the suction of the tube take the blood in. If, say, you use that really tiny 25 gauge needle on that little kitten that's sick and you don't feel comfortable pushing the blood back through the needle, you can remove the cap or the top and then take the needle off your syringe and fill the tube that way. Just make sure that when you put the cap or lid back on, that you vent the tube with a needle by sticking just the needle down in and letting any back pressure off, because you don't want the analyzer to get a bunch of air when it's the first thing to pierce the tube. Does that make sense? Okay. So 0.5 to 1.5 mLs in this. You want to make sure when you're filling it, it gets a good 10 inversions right then. And then if you've set it on the counter or set it in the tube holder while you're waiting to run the analyzer, right before you pick it up and put it in the analyzer, it needs another good 10 inversions before it goes in as well. You want to make sure that this is thoroughly mixed to ensure your best results. Okay. The other tube that you need to run this analyzer is what we call the CBC5R tube, or the gray top tube. This tube contains what we call quali beads, which is something that the analyzer uses to judge the cells against, but then it also contains all of your reticulocyte stain. So this needs to be with the purple top tube when they go into the analyzer. That being said, if you didn't mix this or something happened during the run and you didn't get the results you were looking for, or the analyzer had a malfunction, you can rerun the same purple top tube over so long as you mix it, but each run needs to have a brand new gray top tube. You cannot rerun these, and you'll see when we pull one out, or when you pull one out after running it, it's actually full of more fluid and waste. So these are one-time use. Inside the analyzer itself, in our sample drawer, there are color-coded slots for each of the tubes. So there's a slot number 1 for the purple top tube and a slot number 2 for the gray top tube. And then in here also there are 2 other tubes. There is a yellow tube that's the cleaner tube, and then a red tube that is a waste tube. These live in here and don't need to be taken out after each run. You would only replace these when you open up a new box of tubes. That'll come with a new set of these, and you put them in then. So that's the only time these get changed out. All right, so one thing to keep in mind with this analyzer is as soon as I hit run on the vet lab station, if I've chosen the laser site, it's going to go immediately. So you have to have your ducks in a row, and you have to have your tubes in the laser site before you hit run. It's not going to wait for you. It will pull the stuff in, spit it back out about 2 minutes later, and tell you you forgot your tubes. So just to save yourself an added 2 minutes, just make sure you got your ducks in a row. Okay. One other little tidbit about this analyzer: do not block this vent on the side, the fan. It can overheat, so don't put charts there, don't put folders, don't put files, because if it overheats, it can actually affect your cells and kill your cells, and then you're not going to get accurate results. Okay, so moving down the line then with our catalyst. So the catalyst is the chemistry analyzer. It's going to run your chemistry portion and your electrolytes and all those other slides that I mentioned. So the sample types for this analyzer: you can run a green top tube and spin it down yourself, and that will give you plasma. You can run a red top tube if you let it clot for 20 minutes and then spin it down, and that gives you serum. Or you can run one of our little lithium heparin whole blood separators, which is basically just a green top tube that this analyzer will spin for you and then give you back the leftover plasma. Anything that's ordered on the vet lab station, if you choose your catalyst, it's going to be sent to the pending screen on here. And you'll choose your patients from here. This analyzer will wait for you. So start with your laser site, get your CBC going, and then move on to your catalyst. So you would choose your patient from the pending list. So we're going to order up that patient here so you can see. Okay, so you notice that our patient is hanging out on the pending list here. So I'm going to choose my patient, and this touchscreen likes a little bit more of an actual touch, like a firmer touch. I'm going to verify that that's the patient, so all of my patient information will be here. And you could have multiple patients ordered up waiting to be ran on this analyzer. So I'm going to choose select. So now it wants to know what type of sample am I running. And it may be a little hard to see from back there, but your options are whole blood, plasma, serum, urine, and other. If you're going to use our lithium heparin whole blood separators, you have to choose whole blood. It's the only way the analyzer knows to spin the sample for you. If you're using plasma or serum, just choose appropriately, plasma or serum. If you're planning on running a urine protein creatinine ratio, you would choose urine, and then under special slide, your little UPC would light up. Other is for future development. Under special slides, you have the option to run ammonia. You have to tell it if you're running ammonia because ammonia has to be ran separate from other slides. It can actually be affected by the other slides. And then the PHBR is phenobarbital. If you guys are running phenobarbital, it has to be ran by itself. So you have to tell it, I'm running phenobarbital, so it knows to allow you not to run any other slides at the same time. Down here under dilution, it's always default to none, but this analyzer has the capability to run your dilutions for you. So that being said, it would walk you through adding a sample in an individual slide. Say you got a really high creatinine that you needed to dilute. And then over here, in your tip drawer, it would talk you through adding an empty cup and a cup with 300 microliters of saline. And no worries, because it's going to show you pictures on the screen of what it wants and how much of each thing to put in there. So we are going to tell it that we're just running plasma, and then we would hit next. So in this drawer is where your tips live. I don't know if some of you are familiar with our old analyzer, the vet test, where you had to add a tip and the slides individually with each run. The nice thing about this analyzer is it houses 12 tips for you. It's on a Pez dispenser type spring, so if you add so many, it looks full, you can push it back and add more. Hopefully you guys know what Pez dispensers are. Okay. I don't want to date myself there. So once it's full, then you would just close the door. Best practice is just keep this drawer full, and then you don't have to worry about it when you're going to run multiple samples at a time. The consumables for this analyzer live in the freezer. You have clips, and it depends on what you guys have ordered. A Chem 10 would be similar to a pre-anesthetic panel. A Chem 17 would be similar to your diagnostic profile, and then you have your electrolytes and your individual slides. Best practice is to remove your slides from the freezer right before running. So you don't want to let them warm up. You don't want to open them and have them sitting on the counter. They need to go straight from freezer straight to analyzer. As soon as the packages are open, they actually start to react within 2 to 5 minutes, dependent upon the slide. So the quicker you can get them in the analyzer, the better. Best practice when it comes to that is your electrolytes are the most sensitive. And if you're running a sample, the electrolytes should be on the bottom. Any chemistry is on top of that. And then your any other individual slides on top of that. Okay? So these are your sample drawers. You have the ability to run multiple samples at a time. It will default to this left side if you're just running one sample at a time after another. But if this side's busy and you go to start another one, it will actually open up this side. Down here below, we have your waste container, which should be emptied after each run. That being said, it will keep track, and it will ask you to empty it if it feels like it's too full. When you open and close it, it's going to ask you if it's empty. If you didn't empty it, if you just opened it to look, don't lie to it. Just tell it, no, it's not empty. If you say, yes, it is empty, it's going to reset its count, and then you could potentially end up causing a slide jam. So that was empty, though. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you how the drawer opens and where everything would go. So in your sample drawer, and it's a little hard to see from your ankle, the sample cups for serum or plasma would sit down in little prongs inside. The sample cups hold 300 microliters of plasma or saline, depending upon what you're running. You have a 300 microliter pipetter and pipette tips. To be exact, the whole blood separator, if you're using that, holds 0.7 mLs of liquid, and that would sit down in here just right. It's a kind of a bigger hole. It just sits right there. Your slides go in the front. You want to make sure that your electrolytes are on the bottom, your chemistry is on top, and then any individual slide on top of that. Okay? So I'm going to delete this run so it closes. Once you hit run, it would suck it back in, take in the slides, take in the sample, and the run. It is a 8-minute max run time if it's serum or plasma that you spun down yourself and put in a sample cup. 10-minute max run time if it's a whole blood separator. It's just the added 2 minutes to spin it. And then if you throw a thyroid into the mix, into any of this, it just makes everything 15 minutes regardless of what sample type you're using. Okay? All right. Okay, so moving down the line, this is your snapshot. This is where you will run your bile acids and cortisol, but you will also run your 4DX, your feline triple, your combo, any of those other SNAP tests on here. The nice thing about this analyzer is it times it, and it then reads and records and interprets the result for you. So you can load this and walk away. You still are responsible for snapping the test down and inserting it into either well, and you're just going to tell it what type of test you're running. So for this patient, the touchscreen on this is just like the one on the Catalyst. So your patients will be in the pending list. We're going to choose our patient, and then we have to tell it what type of SNAP test we're running. So I'm going to say we're running a heartworm test. You have to tell it what type of sample you're running. My options are serum, whole blood, or plasma. So I'm going to say we're running whole blood. So down here it's telling me to prepare my sample. If you were unfamiliar in practice with how to mix up a heartworm test or any other SNAP test that you're running, it does give you the instructions here. If I tap on this, it's going to jump to a screen that tells me how many drops of sample, how many drops of conjugate, and how I mix it. So that's step by step here. So I would do that. I would then insert my sample into my SNAP test, and then once it reaches the activation circle, I would snap it down and insert it into either well. Okay, I'm going to delete that. These two holes at the front, if you are running bile acids and cortisol, these are your incubator wells. If you had either of those to run, it would talk you through putting your sample in here and letting it incubate for a period of time, and then going ahead and putting that sample then into your SNAP test. When you insert your SNAP in here, it does not eject it at the end of time. So you'll notice that your patient would be not in process anymore, and your results would be under the results tab, and you can just push on your SNAP test and it'll eject it back out. Okay. So lastly, we have our coag. So the coag analyzer is what's going to run your clotting time. So that will run your PT and your PTT. This runs on cartridges. You have some options, but I'm going to recommend that you only ever run the sodium citrate cartridges. You can run sodium citrate cartridges or whole blood cartridges. Most of my clinics only ever carry the sodium citrate cartridges. Those cartridges they live in the fridge. They need to be warm for at least 30 minutes prior to running. That being said, you can pull 2 out of the fridge and they can live at room temp for up to 28 days before you would have to throw them away. That saves you from having to wait the 30 minutes to warm them up. You run those cartridges, you use a blue top sodium citrate tube, and it's super important that that tube is 3.2% sodium citrate. Any concentration higher than that and your tests are never going to clot. You're going to constantly get high results. So any tubes you get from us will be the 3.2%, but if you order from another offsite company, they could be higher, so just make sure you check that. Once your tubes are warm, you're going to insert them into the little port on the side, if you guys can see that. And you want the well sticking out. You're going to insert the tube into the port, and then you're going to put 3 drops of blood into the well. And then you're going to hit your start button. And it's very specific about the amount of blood you put in it. Too much and it's going to fail, too little and it's going to fail as well. Once you hit start, it's going to suck in the blood, and if it starts a timer, you're good to go. So these run on seconds, so it just takes a few seconds to actually make sure that you have the correct sample or the amount of sample, and then it will clot and give you your number back. So important things, don't use an excessive amount of alcohol when you're drawing for these. That can actually affect your results when you're putting the blood into the blue top tube. And then make sure that your sample has mixed for at least 5 minutes in your blue top tube prior to running, just so that you get a well-mixed sample.